The ship was dead when they found it. It floated in the darkness between stars, its engines cold and its lights gone. The smuggler vessel had tried to run from the patrol ships, but it had failed. Now it drifted like a broken toy, waiting to be opened. Officer Minu stood at the front of the boarding team. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and tired eyes. He had done this work for 15 years. He had seen many bad things inside smuggler ships, weapons, drugs, sometimes people who had been taken from their homes. Each time he hoped the next ship would be empty. Each time he was wrong. The airlock opened with a hiss of cold air. Minu stepped inside first, his weapon raised. Behind him came 4 other officers. Their boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The ship smelled of old food and fear. They moved through the corridors slowly. The first room was the cockpit. The smuggler crew was already in handcuffs on another ship. This vessel was supposed to be empty now, but Minu had learned to never trust that word. Empty. The second room was storage. Boxes filled the space from floor to ceiling. Minu looked at the labels. Medical supplies. Stolen, probably. His team would check them later. The third room was the cargo hold. It was dark inside. The emergency lights had failed here. Minu turned on his flashlight and swept the beam across the space. More boxes, old equipment, broken furniture that nobody wanted anymore. Then he heard it. A small sound, so quiet that he almost missed it, a whimper, like a child crying in their sleep. Minu raised his hand. His team stopped moving. They listened together in the darkness. The sound came again, from the corner, behind a pile of metal crates. Minu walked forward slowly. His heart was beating fast now. He had heard sounds like this before. They never meant anything good. He moved the first crate aside, then the second, the third. And then he saw it. A cage, small and rusted. Inside the cage was a creature. Minu had seen many species in his years of work. The galaxy was full of different beings, but he had never seen anything like this. It was small, about the size of a human child of maybe 4 or 5 years. Its body was covered in silver fur that should have been beautiful, but the fur was dirty and matted with dried blood. The creature had large eyes that looked up at him with pure terror. It had small pointed ears that pressed flat against its head. Its paws had soft pads like a cat, but with fingers like a person. A cub. Minu felt his stomach turn cold. He knew about they were a rare species from a distant world. Their children were sometimes stolen by criminals who sold them to rich collectors, like pets, like toys, like things that had no feelings. The cub pressed itself against the back of the cage. It was shaking so hard that the cage rattled against the floor. Its mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was too scared to even scream. Minu put his weapon away slowly. He knelt down in front of the cage. He tried to make his voice soft and gentle. "It is okay," he said. "You are safe now. We are here to help you." The cub did not understand his words. Of course it did not. It was too young, too scared, too broken. Minu looked at the cage more carefully. He saw the burns on the cub's arms, the cuts on its legs, the places where fur had been pulled out. Someone had hurt this child, many times for a long time. He felt anger rise in his chest, hot and sharp. He wanted to find the people who had done this. He wanted to make them feel the same pain, but that was not his job right now. His job was to help. He called to his team's medic, "Come here quickly." Hurried over. She was a young woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. When she saw the cub, her face went pale. She had treated many injured beings before, but this was different. This was cruelty that she could not understand. "We need to get it out of the cage," she said. Her voice was tight with emotion. "It needs medical attention immediately." Minu nodded. He found the lock on the cage door. It was a simple mechanism. He broke it easily with his tool. The door swung open. The cub screamed. The sound was terrible, high and sharp and full of pain. The cub threw itself against the back of the cage, trying to get away from the open door. It scratched at the metal with its small paws. Blood appeared on its fingers. "Stop," said. "Close the door, you are scaring it." Minyu stepped back quickly. The cub continued to scream. The sound echoed through the cargo hold like something from a nightmare. Tried to approach slowly. She held up her empty hands to show she meant no harm, but the cub did not care. It saw her coming and screamed even louder. It bit at the air with small, sharp teeth. "It does not trust us," Minyu said quietly. "It does not trust anyone." "Can you blame it?" answered. Her eyes were wet with tears. "Look what they did to it. Look what it has been through." They stood there in the darkness, watching the small creature shake and cry. It took a long time for the screaming to stop. When it finally did, the cub collapsed on the floor of its cage. Its breathing was fast and rough. Its eyes stayed open, watching them with fear that would not go away. Minyu made a decision. "We cannot move it like this," he said. "We will take the whole cage, bring it to the medical station. Let the doctors there figure out how to help." His team worked carefully. They lifted the cage with the cub still inside. The creature whimpered but did not scream again. It was too tired, too weak, too broken to fight anymore. They carried it through the corridors of the dead ship, out through the airlock, into the bright lights of the patrol vessel. The cub closed its eyes against the light. It curled into a ball, making itself as small as possible. Minyu watched it and felt something heavy in his heart. He had seen many sad things in his work, but this small, silver creature, trembling in its cage, was one of the saddest. It had known nothing but pain and fear. It believed that every hand would hurt it, every voice would bring suffering. He did not know how anyone could fix that kind of damage. He was not sure it was possible. But he knew they had to try. The patrol ship turned toward the Galactic station. Medical teams there had helped many species. They had healed many wounds. Maybe they could heal this one too. Minyu looked at the cage one last time before leaving the room. The cub's eyes were open again. They watched him go. There was no hope in those eyes, only waiting for the next pain to come. He promised himself silently that no more pain would come. He would make sure of it. The ship flew on through the darkness of space, carrying its small, broken passenger toward what everyone hoped would be safety and healing. None of them knew yet how hard that healing would be. The Galactic Station was one of the largest in this part of space. Thousands of beings lived and worked there. Ships came and went every hour. It was a place of trade, of meetings, of new beginnings. It was also home to one of the best medical centers in the region. Doctor stood in the treatment room reading the report on her tablet. Her face was calm, but inside she felt sick. The images showed what the smugglers had done to the cub. Burns, cuts, broken bones that had healed wrong, signs of starvation, signs of worse things that she did not want to think about. Her species was known throughout the galaxy for their healing abilities. They could feel the emotions of others. They could send calm thoughts into frightened minds. They had helped countless beings through pain and fear. But when she looked at the small cage in the corner of the room, she felt doubt for the first time in her long career. The cub sat pressed against the back of its cage. Its silver fur was still dirty and matted. Its large eyes watched every movement in the room. It had not eaten the food they had left for it. It had not drunk the water. It just watched and waited. "We need to begin treatment," said to her team. "The wounds are infected. If we wait longer, it could die." Her assistant, a young named, nodded slowly. "Should I prepare the sedation?" "Thought about it. Sedation would be the easiest way. Put the creature to sleep, treat its wounds, let it wake up when the hard work was done." But she had seen the report. She knew what drugs the smugglers had used to keep the cub quiet. More drugs might break its mind completely. "No," she said. "We try without sedation first. I will use my abilities to calm it." She walked toward the cage slowly. Her footsteps were soft. Her mind reached out with gentle thoughts, peace, safety, no harm. She sent these feelings toward the small creature like warm water flowing over cold stones. The cub felt her touch its mind. And it screamed. The sound was worse than anything it heard before. The cub threw itself against the cage walls. It scratched and bit at the metal. Its eyes were wild with terror. White foam appeared at the corners of its mouth. Pulled back immediately. She put up walls in her mind to protect herself from the wave of pure fear that crashed against her thoughts. It was like standing in front of a fire, hot and burning and impossible to ignore. "Stop," cried out. "Doctor, you are hurting it." "I am trying to help it," answered, but she stepped back anyway. The cub continued to scream for several minutes. Then, like before, it collapsed from exhaustion. Its small body shook with quiet sobs. Stood very still. She had never failed like this before. Her abilities had always worked, always. Creatures felt her touch and became calm. That was how it worked. But this cub was different. Its mind had been damaged so badly that any mental touch felt like an attack. The smugglers had broken more than its body. They had broken its ability to trust any thought that was not its own. For 3 days they tried. Other healers came. They sent their best doctors. They could create special chemicals in the air, sweet smells that made most creatures sleepy and calm. They filled the room with these gentle scents. The cub smelled the chemicals and panicked. It had been drugged before. It remembered. It clawed at its own face trying to stay awake. It hurt itself rather than let the peace take it. The doctors left with sad faces. Then came they did not use touch or smell. They used sound. Their voices could create music that healed the soul. They had sung away nightmares from 1,000 different species. They sang for the cub, soft notes that floated through the air like gentle rain. The cub covered its ears with its paws. It pressed its face into the corner of the cage and screamed until its throat was raw. The singers stopped. Even they could not break through walls built from such terrible pain. Doctor sat in her office on the 3rd night. She had not slept. She had not eaten much. She kept thinking about the small creature in the treatment room. It was dying, not from its wounds. Those would heal eventually. It was dying from fear. Its heart could not take much more stress. Its body was shutting down because its mind believed that death was better than more suffering. She looked at her tablet. She had sent messages to every medical expert she knew. Most had no ideas. A few suggested drugs so strong that they might cause brain damage. One suggested ending the creature's life peacefully since it could never heal. Refused to accept that answer. There was one more option. She had been avoiding it because it seemed strange. Humans were still new to the galactic community. They had only been traveling between stars for a few generations. Their medicine was basic compared to other species. They had no telepathy, no special chemicals, no healing songs. But there was a human medical officer on the station. A woman named, had worked with her a few times. She was quiet and kind, good with frightened patients, nothing special by galactic standards. Still had heard stories. Strange stories about humans and animals on their home world, about wild creatures that feared all beings except humans who knew how to be still and patient, about damaged animals that could not trust their own kind but would approach a human and feel safe. She did not understand these stories. They made no scientific sense, but she had tried everything that made sense. Perhaps it was time to try something that did not. She sent a message to Lieutenant. The reply came quickly, would come in the morning. Leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. She hoped she was not being foolish. She hoped this strange human could do something that all their advanced technology could not. In the treatment room, the cub lay in its cage. Its eyes were half closed. Its breathing was weak. It had stopped screaming hours ago. It did not have the energy anymore. It knew it was dying. It could feel its body getting weaker, and somewhere deep inside its broken mind it was almost glad. Death meant no more pain, no more fear, no more hands that hurt instead of helped. It did not know that morning was coming. It did not know that a different kind of hand was on its way. It only knew the darkness and the cold, and the endless waiting for something that would not hurt. The station moved through space in its endless orbit. Stars turned slowly outside the windows, and somewhere in her small room, a human woman named read a message about a creature that had rejected every healer in the galaxy. She did not know if she could help, but she knew she had to try. She always tried. That was what humans did. Woke before the artificial sunrise, she lay in her small bed and thought about the message she had received. A cub, abused, terrified, dying because it could not trust anyone enough to accept help. She had seen the images attached to the message. They made her cry quietly in the darkness of her room. She had always been soft-hearted. Her mother used to say it was her greatest strength and her greatest weakness. She got up and dressed in simple clothes. No uniform, no medical equipment attached to her belt, nothing that might look threatening or strange, just a plain gray shirt and comfortable pants. She looked at herself in the mirror, an ordinary human woman, nothing special about her appearance. Brown eyes, black hair tied back simply, a face that smiled easily but also showed sadness clearly. She walked through the station corridors toward the medical center. The station was waking up around her. Beings of many species passed by on their way to work or breakfast, nodded to the ones she knew. She had been on this station for 2 years. She had made friends with creatures from dozens of different worlds. Doctor was waiting for her at the medical center entrance. The looked exhausted. Her skin was pale and her eyes were shadowed with worry. "Thank you for coming," said. Her voice was tight. "I must be honest with you. I do not think this will work, but I have no other ideas." "I understand," said quietly. "Can you tell me more about what happened?" They walked together toward the treatment room, explained everything. The smugglers, the cage, the wounds, the failed attempts by every type of healer on the station. With each detail's heart felt heavier, but she kept walking. "The cub has not eaten in 4 days," continued. "It sleeps only when it faints from exhaustion. Its heart rate is dangerously high. If we cannot treat it soon, it will die. Perhaps today, perhaps tomorrow." Stopped walking. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I need to be alone with it," she said. Looked surprised. "Alone, but what if it hurts you? What if you need help?" "It will not hurt me," said. She did not know if this was true, but she said it anyway. "And if there are others in the room, watching, it will never relax. Frightened animals can feel when they are being observed. It makes them more scared." Wanted to argue. Every medical rule said that patients should not be left alone with untrained caregivers. But she had tried every rule she knew. None of them had worked. "Very well," she said finally. "I will turn off the monitoring cameras. You will be truly alone, but please be careful." "I will," promised. She walked to the treatment room door. She stood there for a moment with her hand on the control panel. She could hear nothing from inside. No screaming, no crying, just silence. That worried her more than noise would have. She opened the door and stepped inside. The room was dim. Someone had turned down the lights. Probably hopping darkness would help the creature rest. The cage sat in the corner just as the reports had described, and inside the cage, a small ball of dirty silver fur. Did not walk toward the cage. Instead, she walked to the opposite corner of the room. She sat down on the cold floor with her back against the wall. She pulled her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. And then she did nothing. She did not speak. She did not move. She did not look directly at the cage. She just sat there, breathing slowly, existing in the same space as the frightened creature. Inside the cage, the cub had been sleeping. Not real sleep, just the kind of unconsciousness that comes when a body is too tired to stay awake. When the door opened, its eyes snapped open instantly. Fear flooded its body. Here was another one, another creature coming to hurt it. But this one did not come close. This one sat far away. This one did not make any noise or movement. This was strange. This was different. The cub watched with its large, frightened eyes. It waited for the trick. There was always a trick. The quiet ones were often the worst. They pretended to be kind and then they hurt you more than the loud ones. Minutes passed, nothing happened. The creature across the room just sat there. It was looking at the wall, not at the cage. Its hands were empty. Its body was relaxed. It did not seem to want anything. The cub did not understand. Every being it had ever met wanted something from it. Pain, fear, screaming. This one wanted nothing. An hour passed, continued to sit. Her legs were getting stiff. Her back hurt from the hard floor, but she did not move. She had done this before long ago on Earth, not with an alien creature, with a dog. She remembered that dog. It had been beaten so badly that it could not walk straight. It had bitten every person who tried to touch it. The shelter had been ready to put it to sleep, but had asked for one more chance. She had sat in that dog's cage for 6 hours, not moving, not reaching, just being there. By the end of those 6 hours, the dog had crawled into her lap. She hoped the same approach would work here. She was not sure it would. This was not a dog. This was something from another world. Its mind worked differently. Its fears might be deeper and stranger than anything she understood. But fear was also universal, and so was patience. Another hour passed, heard small sounds from the cage, shuffling, a quiet whimper. She did not look. She kept her eyes on the wall. The cub had moved. It had shifted its position so it could see this strange creature better. It was confused, very confused. Why did this one not try to touch it? Why did this one not make the scary thoughts come into its head? Why did this one not fill the air with strange smells or painful sounds? This creature just sat and breathed and existed. The cub could hear breathing, slow and steady, in and out, in and out. It was a calm sound, a peaceful sound, different from the fast, frightened breathing of the healers who tried to approach it, different from the excited breathing of the smugglers who enjoyed hurting it. This breathing sounded like safety. The cub did not trust that thought. Safety was a lie. Safety did not exist, but the breathing continued, slow, steady, in, out. 3 hours after entered the room, the cub uncurled its body for the first time in days. Its muscles screamed with pain from being tensed so long. It stretched slowly, carefully, keeping its eyes on the strange creature in the corner. The creature did not react. It did not even seem to notice. The cub tilted its head. This was very strange. What kind of being could sit so still for so long? What kind of being could exist without wanting anything? For the first time in months, the cub felt something other than fear. It did not know what to call this feeling. Curiosity, perhaps. A tiny spark of wanting to know more about this quiet creature who asked for nothing. It pressed its face against the bars of the cage and watched, just watched. And across the room, allowed herself a small private smile that the cub could not see. The first step was complete. Contact had been made, not through touch or words or special abilities. Just through presence, just through patience, just through being human. The harder work was still to come, but this was a beginning. It was always about beginnings. The artificial sun of the station rose and set through the windows. Hours became more hours, sat in her corner. The cub watched from its cage. Neither of them moved much. Doctor checked on them once through a small window in the door. She saw sitting on the floor like a statue. She saw the cub pressed against the bars of its cage, staring at the human. She did not understand what was happening, but she saw that the cub was not screaming. That alone was a miracle. She left them alone. By the 5th hour was very tired. Her body hurt from sitting so long on the hard floor. She was hungry. She needed water. But she did not leave. She had made a promise to herself. She would stay as long as the creature needed her to stay. The cub was tired too, but it was a different kind of tired now. The fear was still there, but it was quieter, like a fire that had burned down to coals. The creature in the corner had done nothing scary for so long. Maybe it really did not want to hurt anyone. Maybe. Finally allowed herself to look at the cage, not staring, just a soft glance. The cub flinched slightly but did not scream. Progress. Slowly, very slowly, changed her position. She stretched her legs out in front of her. She leaned her head back against the wall. She let out a small sigh of relief as her muscles relaxed. The cub watched every movement with sharp attention, but the movements were slow and peaceful, nothing to fear, nothing threatening. Another hour passed. Began to hum. The sound was so quiet that it was almost not there at all, a simple tune from her childhood, something her grandmother used to sing when was scared of storms. The melody had no words, just soft notes rising and falling like gentle waves. The singers had tried music before. Their songs had been beautiful and complex, full of healing power. Humming was nothing like that. It was simple and plain and slightly off-key. But it was real. It came from somewhere deep inside her, from memories of being small and frightened and held by someone who loved her. The cub's ears lifted slightly. They had been pressed flat against its head for days. Now they rose just a little to catch more of this strange sound. This was not like the painful songs before. This sound did not try to force anything. It did not push into the mind or demand relaxation. It just existed, like the breathing, like the stillness, like everything else about this strange creature. The cub found itself moving toward the front of the cage. It did not plan to move. Its body just did it on its own, closer to the bars, closer to the sound. Saw the movement from the corner of her eye. She kept humming. She did not change anything. She did not try to reach out or encourage the creature. She just continued being exactly what she had been. 7 hours after she entered the room, the cub was pressed against the front bars of its cage. Its nose pushed through the gap between the bars. It was breathing in her scent, trying to understand what she was. Smelled like nothing special. Soap, clean clothes, a little bit of sweat from sitting in the same position for so long. No chemicals, no drugs, no hidden threats. Just a person, just a being just there. The cub made a small sound, not a scream, not a whimper, something in between. A question maybe, or an invitation. Stopped humming. She looked at the cage directly for the first time. Her eyes met the large silver eyes of the cub. She saw fear there, but she also saw something else, something that had not been there before. Hope, just a tiny spark, but real. Smiled, a small smile, a human smile that meant kindness without any need for words. The cub did not know what a smile meant. Its species did not smile, but it could feel the warmth behind the expression. It could sense that this movement of the mouth meant something good. Slowly, carefully began to move. She shifted forward on the floor, sliding toward the cage inch by inch. The cub tensed but did not retreat. It watched her come closer with those huge eyes. It took 20 minutes for her to cross the small room. 20 minutes of tiny movements. 20 minutes of patience that most beings in the galaxy did not have. When she finally reached the cage, she sat next to it, not touching the bars, not reaching inside, just sitting close. Close enough that the cub could smell her clearly, close enough that the cub could hear her heartbeat. That sound, the cub focused on that sound. Thump, thump, thump. Slow and steady, strong and calm, not the fast, frightened beating of someone who wanted to hurt, not the excited pounding of someone who enjoyed pain, just a regular, peaceful rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. The cub had never heard a heartbeat like this before. The smugglers' hearts had always raced when they came to the cage. The healers' hearts had beat fast with worry and stress, but this heart was different. This heart was not afraid. This heart was not stressed. This heart was simply existing, pumping life through its body with no fear and no anger. The cub moved closer to the bars, its small face pressed through the gap. Its nose touched the fabric of shirt. Held perfectly still, she barely breathed. This was the moment when everything could go right or very wrong. The cub pressed harder. It was trying to get closer to that sound, that heartbeat, that proof that this creature truly meant no harm. Raised her hand very slowly. She brought it to the cage and held it just outside the bars, not reaching in, just offering. The cub looked at the hand. Hands had hurt it so many times. Hands had burned and cut and grabbed and squeezed. But this hand was still. This hand was open. This hand was just there, like everything else about this creature, just there. The cub stretched its neck forward. Its nose touched his palm. Her skin was warm, soft. It smelled like safety. The cub pressed its face into her hand, and something broke inside it. Not a bad breaking, a good breaking, like ice melting, like walls falling down, like the first breath after being underwater for too long. Tears leaked from the cub's eyes. It had not cried real tears for a long time. It had screamed and whimpered, but it had not cried. Crying meant feeling something other than fear. Crying meant being alive enough to hurt in a different way. Felt the wetness on her palm. She felt the small face pressing against her skin, and she cried too, silent tears running down her cheeks. With her other hand, she slowly opened the cage door. The cub flinched but did not pull away. It kept its face pressed into her palm like that touch was the only thing keeping it alive. Reached into the cage. She put her arms around the small silver body. She lifted it gently, so gently, out of the cage and into her lap. The cub trembled. Every muscle in its body was tight with old fear, but it did not fight. It did not scream. It let itself be held. Pulled the creature against her chest. She wrapped her arms around it and held it close, close enough that it could feel her heartbeat against its own small body. Thump, thump, thump. The cub pressed its face into her chest. It listened to that sound. It let that rhythm fill its broken mind. And slowly, so slowly, it stopped trembling. For the first time in many months, the cub felt safe. Not because of medicine, not because of special powers, just because of a heartbeat, just because of a human who knew how to wait, just because of arms that held without grabbing and hands that touched without hurting. Rocked gently back and forth, she hummed her grandmother's song again. The cub's eyes slowly closed. It was falling asleep, real sleep, peaceful sleep, the kind of sleep that heals wounds in the body and the soul. Outside the room, Doctor watched through the small window. She had come to check on them again. What she saw made her press her hand to her mouth in shock. The cub was in the human's arms. The cub was sleeping. The cub that had rejected every healer in the station was resting peacefully against a human's chest. Did not understand how this was possible. She had studied medicine for 50 years. She had learned every technique and skill that her species had developed. But this human had done something that none of those techniques could do. She had simply been there. She had simply been patient. She had simply been human. And somehow that was enough. The cub slept for 14 hours. Did not move for most of that time. She sat on the floor of the treatment room with the small creature in her arms. Her back ached. Her legs went numb. But she did not put the cub down. She would not risk breaking the trust that had taken so long to build. Doctor came into the room several times. She moved quietly, carefully, treating the cub's wounds while it slept against its chest. The burns were cleaned and covered with healing gel. The cuts were closed with medical spray. The broken bones that had healed wrong would need more work later, but the urgent problems were addressed. The cub stirred a few times during the treatment. Each time, hummed softly and held it closer. Each time, the cub relaxed again, comforted by the steady heartbeat beneath its ear. When the cub finally woke, it looked up with confusion. For a moment, it seemed to wonder if everything had been a dream. Then it felt the arms around it, heard the heartbeat still steady and calm, and it understood. This was real. It was safe. It was being held by someone who would not hurt it. The cub made a soft sound, not a scream or a whimper, something closer to a purr, a sound of contentment that it had not made since it was taken from its home world as a very small baby. Smiled, "Hello, little one," she said quietly. "Did you sleep well?" The cub did not understand her words, but it understood her tone, warm, gentle, kind. It pressed its face back into her chest and purred again. News spread quickly through the station. The creature that had rejected every healer had accepted a human. People were confused, they were curious, they were amazed. Station commander came to see for himself. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been running this station for 20 years. He had seen many strange things, but this was perhaps the strangest. He stood in the doorway of the treatment room and watched, was finally sitting in a proper chair now. The cub was in her lap, eating small pieces of fruit from her hand. It flinched whenever anyone else moved too quickly, but it did not scream. It did not try to run. It stayed close to the human, trusting her to keep it safe. Waited until the cub had finished eating. Then he walked into the room slowly. The cub tensed and pressed closer to, but it did not panic. "Lieutenant," said. His voice was quiet, respectful of the creature's fear. "I must ask you something." Looked up at him. "Yes, Commander." "How did you do this?" He gestured at the cub. "Our best healers tried for days. They have powers and abilities that humans do not have, but they failed. You succeeded. How?" Thought about the question. She stroked the cub's fur gently while she considered her answer. "I did not do anything special," she said finally. "I just waited." Waited, did not understand. "Yes, I sat with it. I did not try to touch it or heal it or make it feel better. I just existed in the same space. I let it watch me and learn that I was not a threat. I gave it time." Shook his head slowly. "But why did that work when nothing else did? That can share calm thoughts, that can create peaceful chemicals, that can sing healing into a wounded soul. You have none of these abilities." Smiled. It was a small, sad smile. Maybe that is exactly why it worked. She looked down at the cub in her lap. It had relaxed again, comforted by the familiar touch of her hand on its fur. "This creature was hurt by beings with power over it," said. "It learned that abilities and tools are dangerous. Every special power that came near it was used to control it or hurt it. So when the healers tried to use their gifts, even to help, the cub could only see more danger." Nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. "I have no special powers," continued. "I cannot read minds or change emotions or create healing sounds. All I have is my heartbeat, my patience, my presence. These things cannot be used as weapons. They cannot hurt anyone." The cub felt that. It knew that I had nothing to use against it. "Your weakness became your strength," said quietly. "Not weakness," shook her head. "Just honesty. Humans cannot hide what we feel. Our hearts beat faster when we are scared or excited. Our bodies show our emotions even when we try to hide them. The cub listened to my heartbeat for hours. It heard that I was calm. It heard that I was not afraid or angry or excited. It learned to trust the truth my body was telling." Doctor had entered the room while was speaking. She listened with wide eyes. "Our abilities can be controlled," said slowly. "I can send calm thoughts even when I am worried inside." The cub might have sensed that difference. It might have known I was pretending. "Yes," agreed. "You were trying so hard to help that you forgot to just be. I did not try to do anything. I just was. And somehow that was what the cub needed." The cub looked up at the sound of the other voice. It saw Doctor and tensed slightly, but kept stroking its fur, kept humming softly, and the cub relaxed again. It was learning. Slowly, carefully, it was learning that not everyone wanted to hurt it. Commander stood quietly for a long moment. He was thinking about everything it said, about power and weakness, about hiding and honesty, about the strange gift of having no gifts at all. "There is a lesson here," he said finally, "for all of us. Sometimes the most advanced solutions are not the best ones. Sometimes the simplest approach is what is needed. "Humans are simple creatures," said with a small laugh. "We have no telepathy, no special chemicals, no healing songs. All we have is time and patience and hearts that tell the truth whether we want them to or not." She looked down at the cub again. It had fallen asleep in her lap, exhausted from the effort of eating and staying awake. Its small chest rose and fell steadily. Its face was peaceful. "But sometimes," said softly, "that is exactly enough." In the days that followed, the cub slowly healed. Its wounds closed. Its fur began to grow back clean and silver. It learned to eat regular meals and drink clean water. It learned that not every touch brought pain. Stayed with it through all of this. She could not leave the station while the cub needed her, and she found that she did not want to leave anyway. She had formed a bond with this small creature, a bond built on patience and trust and the steady rhythm of her heart. The cub learned to tolerate other beings. It no longer screamed when Doctor entered the room. It allowed to check its healing wounds. It even let Commander sit nearby without panicking. But it always stayed close to. When it was scared, it pressed against her chest. When it was tired, it slept in her lap. When it was happy, it purred against her ear and made soft sounds that might have been trying to copy her humming. Word of what happened spread beyond the station. Scientists and healers from many worlds came to study the case. They wrote reports about the human who had succeeded where advanced medicine had failed. They tried to understand how something so simple could be so powerful. Some of them understood. Most of them did not. They kept looking for techniques and methods and special skills. They did not see that the answer was not a technique at all. The answer was just being human, being present, being patient, being honest in a way that bodies could not fake. Did not care about the reports or the scientists. She cared about the small silver creature that slept peacefully in her arms. She cared about the trust she had earned through hours of stillness and silence. She cared about the heart that now beat calmly inside this once broken child. The cub had no name. The smugglers had never given it one. Thought about names for a long time. She wanted something that meant hope, something that meant new beginnings. She named the cub Bora. It meant purple in her grandmother's language, purple like the color of the sky at sunset, purple like the first stars appearing at night, purple like the space between darkness and light where healing happens. Bora learned her name quickly. When said it, the cub's ears would perk up and its eyes would find her face. It was a small thing, a name, but it meant everything. It meant belonging. It meant being seen. It meant being more than a thing in a cage. Months later, stood at the window of the station, looking out at the stars. Bora was in her arms, also looking. The cub's silver fur was clean and beautiful now. Its eyes were bright and curious instead of hollow with fear. "What do you see out there?" asked softly. Bora made a small sound and pressed closer to her chest. It did not matter what was out there in the darkness of space. What mattered was here. What mattered was the heartbeat beneath its ear. What mattered was safety and love and a human who had asked for nothing except to exist in the same space. That was the gift humans brought to the galaxy. Not technology, not power, not special abilities. Just hearts that told the truth. Just patience that asked for nothing. Just presence that meant safety. Just being human. And sometimes, that was the most powerful thing of all.